Tonight, I'd like to talk about a subject that is especially close to my heart. Wankers. And by wankers, I obviously mean psychologists. But only because there's this general perception, I think, that psychologists are, to put it politely, a bunch of wankers. Maybe not on the same scale as economists, or the Cape Kennedy Club, but definitely in the same ballpark. And I think there's this very famous and ancient St. Andrew's saying that captures a sentiment beautifully. And that saying is, the only thing more worrisome than a psychology degree is one that has regrettably been obtained from Dundee. And that's why I'd like to use the time remaining tonight to make a case for the fact that all your ill-conceived notions about who we psychologists are and the work that we do are all incredibly accurate. Now, one of the tools we psychologists love to use is something called a Likert scale. Now, I know what you're thinking, and believe me, I agree. What an epic name for an oral sex toy. But actually, we use it to measure our opinions, beliefs, and attitudes. And I'm sure all of you would have come across this at some stage when you've done a survey or a questionnaire. The most recent example I can think of the Likert scale in action is at Singapore Airport. So when you enter a toilet in Changi Airport, you're confronted with a touchscreen, and you're asked to rate the cleanliness of the toilet on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 being filthy and 5 being pristine. Now personally, if I wanted to enhance the user experience of this, I'd have 5 holes in each urinal. Right? That way you could key your response. So if you were undecided about the cleanliness of the toilet, you could focus all your energy and pee into the 3rd hole. I know. Let's move on to the real science. So I recently took part in an online study, and I want to walk you through it because I think it'll help to give you an idea about the role that Likert scales play in everyday psychology. And so, after first inputting my demographics, name, age, and gender, we got into the study. So in section 1, I had to rate to what extent the following words best described me. And I had to rate these words on a 7-point scale. So 1 being not at all like me, 4 being somewhat like me, and 7 being very much so like me. And some of the words I had to rate were passive, dominant, cruel, miserable. I know, fun words, right? And then in section 2, I had to rate to what extent the following phrases best describe me. I often feel frustrated. I sometimes get angry. I often find myself anxious. In section 3, I had to rate to what extent I felt the following emotions in the past month. Anger, sadness, hurt, fear about the future. Now, 3 sections into the study, I was trying to second guess what the study was really about. And, I was thinking, maybe it's about low mood, possibly depression, but definitely something linking emotions and our day-to-day lives. So you can imagine my surprise, right, when we come to the end of the study and the following message flashes on the screen. Please fill in the blanks. I am looking for men/women between the ages of blank and blank. That's right, I now have an online dating profile with eHarmony. Please feel free to check it out. I'm the tall, dark Russian woman. But there are some absolute gems on this survey, right? Everything I've said so far is true, and there's some absolute gems that I want to share with you because they really highlight the beauty of the survey. One of the statements you have to rate is, I waste time. No, that doesn't sound like me. I use my time for meaningful things, like trying to find my soulmate by rating how sad I am on a 7-point scale. Or another statement. I ask questions in search of information. No, I ask questions to be an annoying 2-year-old. Or my personal favorite. I desire sexual activity. No, I came here because I desire a cup of coffee, but Starbucks is closed and my mum's away on holiday. Ladies, you'll especially love this. You're asked to rate to what extent the following words best describe your physical appearance. Healthy, sexy, overweight, or plain. That's right, plain. Now, to be honest, I'm surprised they stopped there, because I would have continued on with crusted, seeded, wholemeal, buttered. Because ladies, apparently we men like our women the way we like our toast. Which brings me to an important point. Psychologists may be a bunch of wankers, but at least we don't try to set you up with emotionally unstable time wasters who have the intellect of a 2-year-old and the sexual drive of a toastie. It's actually a true story behind this, and that is, the first time I ever did this set was at Bright Club Dundee about a month ago. And I was doing the same routine, and I came to this part, where, ladies, these words, your physical appearance. And I made the mistake of, as I said the words, I was looking at the audience, but I made eye contact with different women in the audience. And you can realize it's quite problematic, right? Because it's almost like I was implying that that word was meant for them. And so if the word had a slightly negative connotation, the lady looked back at me as if to say, "How dare you judge me, you ugly, pathetic Indian virgin?" And if the word was slightly positive and she'd come with a guy, the guy looked at me like I was the spawn of Gary Glitter. Which is why I decided the best approach was to look down at my feet when I did that. And that also leads very nicely into the next line of my set, which is, I'm actually less of a wanker than you initially thought. And that's because I'm not a psychologist. I'm still in the same school, though. Technically, I'm classified as a neuroscientist. To each his own, Paul, to each his own. But what that means is sometimes I get to work with animals, and that... There wasn't a joke there, that's just your mind. Let's try this again. One of the beauties of being a neuroscientist is that I sometimes get to work with animals. And the thing about working with animals is you can't give them Likert scales or questionnaires to fill in, right? So you need to be able to design your study in such a way that you can get the information you want without having them to give you written or verbal responses. And so I'm interested in memory research, and one of the most basic experiments we do is to assess if an animal can recognize a new object, something it remembers it's never seen before. And this is how we go about doing it. We start by giving an animal 2 identical objects. So for argument's sake, let's say 2 identical action figures of Nigel Farage. And they play with him and they explore him. And let's be honest, that's the most action he's had in a while. And you find that they spend about the same amount of time between the 2 objects because they have no reason to do otherwise. They're exactly the same. And then you take these objects away and you replace them with a replica of Nigel Farage and a new action figure of Al Murray. And you find they go straight to Al Murray and they spend way more time with him. Not because my animals are secretly looking for that British moon on a British stick, but because they recognize that Al is a new object in their environment, and so they remember they've never seen it before. And this is actually one of the beauties of working with animals, in that there is potential to get pure, unadulterated information, which isn't always the case with humans. Why? Because humans lie. We lie all the time, right? We lie to protect, we lie to deceive, we lie to comfort. And the Likert scale is one of the best enablers of this deceit, because it allows you to rate statements not based on who you actually are, but based on how you want to be perceived to be. So let's come back to that statement, I desire sexual activity. Now you're creating an online dating profile, which means you probably haven't had a date for a while. Which means the lower half of your body is telling your brain to rate that statement a 7 on 7. But you're going to give it a 5. You know why? Because you don't want to come across as being shallow. You want to be the guy that's also about the cuddles and the communication. And it's you guys that make me sick. And besides, if you wanted to be brazenly desperate, right, you'd sign on with Tinder. Or my personal favorite, mycougardates.com. I like how half the guys just nervously laugh because they know what I'm talking about. And the other half are looking at each other like, is that an actual site? It is. But here's the reality, right? People lie on Tinder all the time as well. Tinder is supposed to be a great place for easy, no-strings-attached sex. And yet there are some weirdos out there who claim that's what they want, but are actually looking for loving, long-term relationships. Also, people in my lab tell me. Anyway, I'd like to finish with something that I'd like you to think about as you head home tonight, some food for thought. And I'd like to borrow the words of the famous French poet, philosopher, and thinker, Jace, or Jay-Z for short. And he said this so eloquently. If you're having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son. You should have dated a neuroscientist, because psychologists are continuously getting you to rate stuff. St. Andrews, you've been amazing. Thank you very much.